Yeah. Okay, I think we're going to start. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining, because we want to try and keep it as short as we can. Can you see my screen? I think it's working well. Dorcas, you can talk. Can you see my screen?
Yes, Ma, I can see your screen.
Okay. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. We are having this conversation to celebrate the 2024 Children's Day, and we thought to do something that children will benefit from down the road by speaking with parents and talking on a topic that we have titled this evening, Intentional Parenting and Financial Freedom. I have two qualified guests this evening, and we'll try to make sure that we give as much as we can, as much time as we can to each of the questions, because they're both qualified to handle any question. They have experience in their professional capacities, and they also have experience as parents. I know that this conversation will be lively. We'll try not to drag the questions too much. We were talking just before this program started, the guest and I, and we were talking about the value of paying attention to parenting and being intentional about it, and how that can make us, or make us better and more effective parents. I likened it to marriage, where some people are fortunate enough to have marriage counseling classes, and so they do better for it, and some don't have marriage counseling classes and just go into marriage and it ends up being trial and error. Some people are very successful even without having counseling, while some people will look back and realize that some mistakes they've made would not have been made if they had counseling classes. And so we are looking at this, and we're bringing this to you on the Finance Coach BK platform, the financial literacy platform. Some people that will join us are already members of the community, and some are new to the community. But the essence of this platform is to reduce poverty as much as we can and reduce financial dependency by people. We work towards giving financial freedom to as many people as we can, financial independence. The better, the more financially capable we are, the more that things we can achieve happily and comfortably. And so we have so many questions to deal with. I will just start by introducing I will introduce my guests to you. They're coming pro bono. As you all know, this community is a privileged community, because all the things that we should pay for, most of the time, I get willing guests who come and share from their wealth of knowledge, consultants and people whose intellectual knowledge and experiences are things that otherwise would be paid for. I want to thank Dr. Ede this evening for doing this with me sincerely. I want to thank Mrs. Farms for doing this with me and with the community. I will start by introducing Dr. Ede. Dr. Ede is a medical doctor. He has over 15 years of experience. He has worked as the head of preventives and wellness in a previous role. He's a wellness expert. He calls himself a story narrative consultant. He's a book and script writer and all-round tech geek. And so some of the questions that relate to technology and how we're bringing our children up in this dispensation, I'll be directing to him. He is happily married. I like to always emphasize happily. When I put a bio online, I didn't put the word happily, but I know his wife and I know they're happily married and they're raising 3 young children. He will share his experiences from the professional point of view and also his practical experience, as a parent to what we call Generation Alpha kids. The world is fast-paced now and parenting is different for how Generation Z, Generation Alpha, and all, how they've been brought up. I thank you very much, Dr. Ede, for doing this with me. I am very grateful. My second guest is Mrs. Funke Aturamufamubiwo. She's a dispute resolution specialist with particular interest in family child development, and child protection. She was called to the Nigerian Bar in January 2001, and she is a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Mediation and Conciliation. Mrs. Farms, she's Mrs. Famobiwo, but I call her Mrs. Farms. She mentors young adults as a way of giving back to the society. I know she mentors loads of law school students and young teenagers and young adults in her church. So 2 platforms, the law school platform and the church platform, she mentors young adults. Her hobbies are reading, writing, and watching, like you expect, with some legal background, courtroom drama. She's married and she's blessed with 3 children. Now she brings her experience of parenting 2 matured young children to the platform today. I thank you very much both for doing this. And while I'm very conscious of the time that we have, I want to quickly share with the friends around the table this evening. Those that are used to the Finance Coach BK community know that we have 3 things that we talk about. We say the ESI model is our way of getting out of poverty, our way of achieving financial independence, and our way of achieving financial freedom. And the ESI model is very simple to adopt. It's the E says earn more. Whatever you're doing, you must aspire to earn more. We're not going to be contented with one job. We're going to seek to make money from as many active jobs as we can take and from passive income. And then the S now ESI model says save better. Whatever you're doing, you must aim to save better. You must always try to exceed your previous saving level, because from your savings, you then can build up money that you can translate into investments. And then the I of our ESI model says invest well. We tell ourselves on the Finance Coach BK platform, we're not going to make investment mistakes. We're not going to work hard for our money, earning money from multiple sources of income and struggling to save and saving so well, and then get to the investment level and we begin to make mistakes. So we will always invest well. We tell ourselves in this community, we will work with finance coaches, we will work with finance mentors, financial mentors, and we will get as much help as we need. We will keep ourselves knowledgeable, be financially literate, so that we don't make investment mistakes. And that's the ESI model that we use in this community to do things better. And now I always say to people, anytime you start your financial journey, it's okay. If you were not earning well or earning from multiple streams of income before now, it doesn't matter. You can always start. So financial growth, financial well-being, financial excellence, and growing wealth does not have any age barrier. So if you think you are neck deep in debt today, you can get out of it. And so with age is no barrier to doing things better. And now, why are we talking about intentional parenting and financial freedom? The earlier you achieve, the better you bring up your children, the earlier you can achieve financial freedom. If your children are tied to your apron, then you'll see have a long way to go with financial freedom. And if you bring your children up well in this dispensation, your children can also achieve financial freedom better. And that's why we're paying attention to this now. And if it's the only thing that you and I can do for Nigeria, our home country, or wherever we find ourselves, because Dr. Eda is a Kingston, you are helping the future generation by parenting them right. The loads of people who we see who have lost balance and they've gone to take guns, they've gone into the schools and they've started shooting people, or going into the malls and shooting people. if you look back very well, comes from some parental deficiency. I thank you, Dr. Ede and Mrs. Farms. That's how I'll be addressing them both this evening. I thank you all for joining me. And I thank all the friends around the call for also joining me. Now, quickly, I'm going to start by Dr. Ede. Would you like us to do ladies first, or it doesn't matter?
Oh, my upbringing tells me you're ladies first, definitely.
I know. I respect.
I'm a millennial, so
and I'm very thankful for your parents, right? So, Mrs. Farms, thank you so much for joining us today. Can you please tell us something in your background about parenting? And this is just the opening. I don't have the questions for you yet. And tell me something about your background with parenting. You know, you're muted. You're muted.
Sorry about that. So those are two questions fused together. Which one do you want me to start with? My background or my experience with parenting? You want me to give...
What's your background with parenting?
Okay. I am a mother, by the grace of God, a biological mother to 3 kids, and I have several other kids that I mentor who are not my biological children. And then by the grace of God, I'm also the chairman of the family court here in Lekki. That means that all cases that have to do with children 18 years and below come to my court. And a lot of times, sometimes they're children in conflict with the law, sometimes they're children in need of care and shelter, but it just makes me their parents. As the chairman of family court, I'm the parent of any child who comes to court. So I have biological children, I have children in church, and then all the children that I give care and protection orders to are my children.
Thank you very much. Just to put clarity, tell me and tell the people around the call, how old is your youngest child and how old is the oldest?
My oldest child, by the grace of God, is 21. It's going to be 22 in September. Then my last is 16. She just completed WAEC and she's going to be 17 in November by God's grace.
Thank you very much. It's deliberate that I ask those questions so that the audience would understand the mix of yourself and Dr. Ede. Thank you so much. Dr. Ede, what's your background? And then if I may add. Sorry?
Okay, no, I just wanted to add that the children I deal with, in the course of my work, my duty, are children 18 and below.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Ede, please, do you want to share your background to parenting?
Okay, so although I'm not quite as experienced as Madam Funke as well, but obviously, and yourself, because obviously you have older kids, but I relish the fact that we have all 3 of us on the panel here are parents of different generations. So there's a wealth of experience, and I feel the deliberateness in crafting such a panel. My name is Edebini Omokudu. I'm a medical doctor. I've got 3 kids, 3 beautiful kids, 2 girls and a boy. The oldest of my kids, she's 9, and my son, he's 4. So again, all of them Gen Alphas. In my own experience, I've had tons of young kids who I've been coaching and also basically serving as a mentor and guidance for, and most of them are Gen Zs as well. So I'm a millennial. I have Gen Zs that I take care of, and I have my own very own. I like to call them my minions, right? So my 3 minions from Gen Alpha as well. So basically, we have a good generational spread of kids that I also cover as well.
Thank you very much. Like I said to the guests, the people around the call, they're going to get value for their time here today, because between you and Madam Funke, and like you just added me now to the panel, of course, we have so much to talk about. Quickly, before I go into questions that are specific to parenting, I owe it to both of you, and I will start with you, Dr. Ede. What are you doing about financial freedom? What are you doing to stay financially fit?
Oh, fantastic. That's a beautiful question. So the thing is, when it comes to finance, based on my background as a medical person, right? As a medical person, it hasn't been, My apologies. My little boy just wandered.
It's okay.
Yeah,
He can join you. It's fine.
All right. So pretty much, yeah. So in my own background, as a medical person, it's weird because a lot of us aren't trained in the world of finance. It's one of the things I found that it's a really serious deficit for healthcare professionals and a few other people who are really just all about the profession. So my personal journey with finance has to do with my background. So my parents, pretty okay, when they were working. But then again, I've been through the entire spectrum from lack itself to having pretty okay. And then me myself now having to be a parent, I realized that if I didn't take the bull by the horns, then I would be in trouble. So rather than being a salary earner, I decided to leverage off the fact that my parents were pretty okay, and I started to go into a little bit like entrepreneurship in school. So believe it or not, as I am, when I was in Ghana, I had a check store. So we basically sell rice and chicken in the universities with university students as well. And then when I transferred to the Caribbean, my parents would give me my pocket money. I would take my pocket money and go and buy hair. So I mean, I know all the color ones, color two, yaki flip, you name it. Or I'll use that, buy that stuff, and then go back to school and sell. So I've had an entrepreneurial streak, but that also led me down to world of finance to understand what gives and what the markets are. So my current standing is that I also try to understand where the financial markets are going. There as well, because that's the way the world is going. Everybody's buying stocks. If you see online, there's cryptos, there's different assets that one can leverage off of. So my current standing is that I'm engaged with the markets right now, and I'm trying to teach myself. If my son right now who walked in, if I tell him, what's green? So green is buy.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that. Beautiful. So what I hear you saying, Dr. Ede, is that you're very intentional and deliberate about it, coming from your background, and you've been able to pay attention. So you do understand the E of the ESI model. You are now officially inducted into the Finance Coach BK community. Thank you very much. Mrs. Farms. Ooh,
yes, please.
Mrs. Farms has been a member of the community for long. Please tell us what you're doing to stay financially fit. And I want to add one question to yours. What are you doing about retirement planning?
Okay, I'll answer the first one first. Because of the because of the nature rather of my 9-to-5 job, there's a limit to the kind of businesses that I can venture into. But right now, I try as much as possible to save from what I earn, and then I do money markets, fix a little here, fix a little there. Then permit me to say gold.
Oh yeah, gold is a very good store of wealth. Yeah,
because
that's very
the value appreciates.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yes, and it's almost as liquid as cash because it's just a phone call away. The malam is just a phone call away. If you ever need,
but we're not selling.
When you get ready.
According to Dr.
No, I'm just trying to explain that it's almost as liquid as cash.
We hold. Absolutely. So I hear that you're intentional, Mrs. Farms, and I have interacted with you a lot. I do know that you're very fervent with the Finance Coach BK community. I know you're interested in shares, the capital market. I know you ask questions about the money market, and I know you also have your eye on the real estate market. Yeah, thank you very much. Now, the retirement planning, you mentioned the nature of your job. That's a good one. So what are you doing? Yes. And what would you encourage your colleagues who may sign up to this program to do about retirement?
So right now, it's luckily for me, I do a 9-to-5 job that I enjoy, which is dispute resolution. So by the time I retire from a 9-to-5 job, I will just continue with being a dispute resolution specialist. I'm training myself now. Right now, I'm a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Mediation and Conciliation. I've registered for a course next month for the Lagos Multi-Door Court House, to learn about arbitration and stuff like that. And I'm also training myself in other aspects of arbitration as opposed to litigation. My 9-to-5 job is litigation, dispute resolution through litigation. but my retirement plan is dispute resolution through alternative.
Excellent. This is
Yes.
inspiring.
So
Yeah.
right now I'm a dispute resolution specialist doing litigation, but my retirement plan is to be a dispute resolution specialist in arbitration. That's alternative dispute resolution.
So what's important, Mrs. Farms, is that you have your eye on the future.
Yes.
Mrs. Farms works for government. That's why that question is very important, but she's not, she's a big woman in government, but she's not here in that capacity. But the issue is that most people that work for government, they rely and wait for the government retirement benefits, which may end up not being so much. And so that question to you was deliberate. And I'm so happy that you have your eye on the future, your eyes on the future. What you're saying is you're building up skills to be your own employer down the road and to offer these services in the capacity of the legal terminologies that you use, which entered and came out here. And that's why I'm not a lawyer. Thank you very much.
I'm basically doing the same thing. It's just that by the time I retire, I'll be working for myself and not for the government, but it's still basically dispute resolution.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen around the call. If you are working for government in any form, please do not wait for the government retirement benefits alone. Upskill, my guest in January, I have one of the speakers around the call. They taught us about how to, improve ourselves and take on skills that we need to be competitive in the workplace or in our businesses. And that's what Mrs. Farms is doing. She's bringing all the skills that she will need down the road. Thank you very much. My next question is for Mrs. Farms, actually, and it has to do with control and parenting. And Dr. Ede, please do listen in case you have something to add to it. So some of the comments, and this session is very good because most of the questions, came from those that registered, and they were very similar to questions I would have asked anyway. And so there's a talk about control versus parenting. Control versus parenting. So correcting children and making sure that they understand and feel a choice. They feel that they have a choice in doing the right thing rather than controlling. How can you balance being intentional, by allowing your children the freedom, to make the choices? I don't know if the question is clear. So, there's a way you can try to correct a child and you're enforcing it, perhaps with some form of pain or something. But there's a way that you can help the child understand the situation and take correction. I don't know if you understand this question.
So
we're talking about control and parenting.
First of all, I will start by saying something about intentional parenting. Intentional parenting is consciously doing some things or refraining from doing some things in order to achieve a goal in respect of your child. I'll go over that again. You're consciously doing some things or you're refraining from doing some things because you want to achieve something. There's a goal that you want to achieve. Consciously doing or not doing to achieve a goal. Now, your question was a bit confusing because I'm African, I'm an African mom, and I don't know how I can successfully parent without controlling, especially when the kids are still small. You have to supervise the kids. I give supervision orders. I say, make sure you supervise your kids. So supervision somehow is like control, but I would not like to, I hope I'm not being too forward, but I want to make a distinction between respecting and fearing in supervising. When you're trying to control a child who respects you, for a child to respect you, that child must admire you, must trust you and recognize something positive about you and respect your authority. You are the father, a successful father, upright father, that child is looking up to you, admiring you, trusting you, recognizing your position as his father or her father. and recognizing that authority, as opposed to fear. When daddy or mommy comes home, there's anxiety, there's apprehension, there's the feeling that something bad is going to happen to me if I don't do something. So there's a difference between doing something out of fear and then doing something out of respect. I would like to substitute the word control with supervise. Coach, you use the word control.
Yeah, okay. So
I would like control. I've never really come across the word control in.
So it's in the context
parenting.
of So it's in the context of
supervise.
How does a child know that he has a choice or not? Maybe let me let Dr. Ede add to it.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So in my experience, I would say the word control, like the world right now, to be honest, I feel is overly sensitive. And so they try to, there's a negative connotation to the word control, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that word, especially given the context. I feel, you can't separate parenting from control. They're both, very entwined, right? And the reason is because children, again, they mature through different phases. And so when you're going through different phases, especially like in the beginning, you have to create, as a parent, you have to create a controlled environment where it's more of an external sort of measure, where the parent, okay, you control the environment, you ensure you baby-proof you plug the where the electrical sockets are, they're baby-proofed. And so that's a measure of control in terms of parenting for that stage and when they're like toddlers and whatnot. And as they mature, from, being babies and toddlers into, young kids, where they between the age of 4 to 6, that's where you also have to, as a parent, also now ensure that they start to have self-control, basically, where they start to regulate themselves in certain things. Okay, can you sit still? Can you do this? Now you have to put those measures. So parenting, I wouldn't separate the word parenting from control because I feel they're very entwined. But if we're to look at everything as a singular sort of appreciation, then parenting itself as an overview is just that deliberate, especially when you talk about deliberate parenting, is the entire discipline of having to do things with a set goal in mind. What are your values? Okay, what are the values? What are the values that you want to put in the child? You want to encourage, right? But then the control measures, that's why, in the world of science, as a man of science myself, you would tell you, we have a controlled experiment. Now, what's the control there, right? Where things are pretty much in an ideal situation. But we all know that kids, as individuals and as human beings, I mean, we're just as unique as our thumbprints are. Same, right? So in terms of control and measure, I would say every child is unique. So just as a parent, as a family, you have your set values. And so what are the measures with which you would use to instill those values and encourage their individuality and their true selves to manifest, and then you encourage set way. So I feel they're both entwined.
Thank you for this insight. So you are saying that we must have some level of control, the positive, not the negative ways being used, if parenting must be successful. Mrs. Farms, you chose to replace control with one word.
Yeah, but after listening to Doctor,
what's the word? The word you chose to
supervise.
Supervision.
Supervise. But after listening to Doctor, I think we can all safely conclude that control would work better when the kids are much younger.
Yeah, so that's why. So like through some
supervision when they're old enough to argue. But all in all, we have to create a balance.
Yeah, so
we have to create a balance.
So I might not have put a question out there the way it should be, but I think the context in which it was asked is that how do we as parents get the buy-in of those that we are parenting, so they see that whatever we're asking them to do, it's for their own benefit, and that they have a choice. If they do what they shouldn't do, they should be ready for the repercussions. So in other words, sort of put it in their hands, but I hear you both, and I'm learning. My kids are they are not Generation Alpha. I think they fall into, doctor, what do they fall into?
The millennials.
Gen Z. No, they are Gen Zs here. So I hear you all. So I'm still learning, and I hear what you're saying is that control is important. And I hear you saying that it depends on the age, but I also understand the person who put this question forward, that those who are parenting at a particular age must accept the consequences of their choices. Yeah. All right, Mrs. Farms, I have another question for you. Let me ask this question, then you can say what you want to say with this next question, because the next question is also for you. Now, you're someone that I know very well, and I've watched your parenting style. You've even written some parenting articles for a magazine that I edit. Now, and I know that communication is very, very important in the way you have done your parenting so far, and you have been very intentional making sure that that channel of communication exists between yourself and your children. I'm not embarrassed to say publicly that I do envy you at the level of communication that you have with your children. So the question for you is, what part does communication play in intentional parenting, and how can parents improve communication skills with their children? Another question, which may not be for you and Dr. Ede, but you may be able to answer it, is what will you do to make your children listen to you? How can you break down communication barriers between a parent and a child? So many questions, but all about communication.
But Coach, you're asking me about more questions in one.
Yeah,
so
because we must finish. It's all about communication. It's all about communication.
I will start by saying what it was that I wanted to say earlier about control and supervision and all that. You know, you can't, just like in every aspect of life, you can't win all. You win some and you lose some. So with the children, sometimes you have to let them make their mistakes. But then again, it depends on the kind of mistakes you want them to learn from. Like, I'm not going to allow my teenage daughter go alone to a boy's house to learn a lesson. But I can allow my teenage daughter pay from her pockets a makeup artist, and then when she sees her face looking like that of a transvestite, she knows that it is not necessarily worth it. So there are some that you let them make that mistake and learn from it, and then some others you put your foot down and you say, no, you cannot do this. When they get older, they would understand. Then, just like in every other relationship, marriage, employer, employee, client, customer, doctor, patient, communication is key. So as parents, we have to learn to manage our emotions when our kids are confiding in us or talking to us. When a child says something, you control, listen, think, digest, and then know how to advise. And then you encourage them to talk to you by also talking to them about yourself. And then knowing their friends. And when I was your age, my mom did this, or my mom did that, or I did that, and my mom gave me the beating of my life. Or who is that person? There's nothing wrong with you having a friend of the opposite gender, but just let me know. And those kind of things. It's when the generation where they know more of their rights than they think their parents do. So to encourage them, you don't castigate or berate when you hear something that is outrageous. You listen, you digest, and then you advise accordingly. Because like in the course of my job, some children have been abused. And then it is not by shouting or screaming that they confide in you. You encourage them to talk. There's nothing new on that. So you share your own experiences, and but at the end of the day, the communication is it's not just for entertainment. It is for you to correct that child and put the child on the right track. And as parents also, we should try as much as possible not to play the blame game, blaming, So, and then also develop the FBI skill.
Sorry?
FBI skill.
What?
The FBI skill.
Okay, tell us about that.
No, just to be intelligent enough to read between the lines. And the question you're asking is not necessary for the answer that you're going to get, but because you want to read between the lines, you have to be emotionally intelligent as a parent.
Okay.
You have to be emotionally intelligent.
Okay. I think Doctor has something to add to that. Thank you very much, Mrs. Farms. Yeah.
Thank you, Mrs. Farms. That's you've mentioned a very key set of points. And to be honest, I would say you have everything pretty much nailed down when it comes to communication. So I'm going to talk from the perspective of a father. So thank you again for the diversity. Because when she was talking and giving her point, I couldn't help but think you can tell when someone is a nurturer, and you can tell that she nurtures talent, she nurtures kids. But as a father, it's a different role, right? So you have to be the arbiter of justice and being stoic and whatnot. So you see that's a different standpoint. So communication, really, as I say, there's different forms we can explore. There's verbal communication, non-verbal communication, subtle cues, even silence is a form of communication. Depends on the kid. And I say, in my experience, that the way kids are, as a parent of 3 Gen Alpha kids, I'll tell you, I'm from the millennial age. I'm from the age of beatings. They will brush you one time, right? But then I found out with them, they respond more to not just verbal communication and also some non-verbal cues, such as back in our day, it just eyes. Your parents and the eyes tell volumes. You could have seen like your whole life flash before you. But in our case, we've also tried to encourage that with them so that we can have also non-verbal communications. If you're messing up, we'll tell you, just look at you funny. That's not good. Or my parents are not happy with me with the kind of way. But as a father, you have to be very stoic. You can't, and so my kids are the generation that they question everything. You can't, it's not like before where, you just, my daddy says that's what I'm going to do it. No, they'll tell you why. My son, particularly, every single thing is going to ask you why. And as a man of science, I respect that, because 2 things. 1, as a father who has to lead by example, I have to be on my toes. I have to know what I'm saying. I have to mean what and have empirical proof or data to let them know. So it was a day, this is from a slightly religious perspective. Asked me, is God real? And from a Nigerian parent, you're like, this one will come. What I'll answer this one with, right? And so fortunately for me, because of the fact that I had been doing some research prior to when she was born, I was kind of ready for that. But in a way, it still took me off guard, because you're like, okay, she's growing up in Nigeria first, and before we came to Canada and everything, like how? Right? So as a parent, as a father, there are different roles you have to play. You don't have to be as emotionally, reactive. You have to be able to take certain things in. Oh, my dad is always kind of quiet. Every time my dad speaks a certain kind of way, he's probably thinking about the answer. He's probably thinking. So my kids come to me all the time for answers and whatnot. But with my wife, on the other hand, she's amazing. Like they love her, but then they know you want to whatever, you don't cross mommy, right? So that's the nurturing kind of thing. She's always there for them. But then me, I have to balance things a bit. So I think the roles from both parents, it is clearly defined. It's not cut in stone for anyone, but different families have different set of values, and then one person has to be that representative of all that stands, and then eventually the other one can always nurture them through the points.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ede. I keep saying I will learn my lesson. When I had my guests in January, I had 2 powerful guests, and the time was just not enough to get all the benefits of their experience and their knowledge. I have so many questions for yourself and Mrs. Farms, but I want to stay on this a little bit because of, this angle that you brought into it, being a father and having to be stoic. Is that the word, S-T-O-I-C, yeah? I know that, and I'm going to do a session with yourself and your wife down the road, so that we can talk as much as we should. Now, you don't have to answer this question. I don't want you to spend too much time to answer it, but it's a perspective that I want you to relate to what you just said. Now, because I do a lot of mentoring and counseling, I see people who have come from very stern, loving backgrounds, fathers who love them, that can die for them, but because the mien and the position that the parents took while raising these children, they've come out feeling a little bit disconnected. So there needs to be a balance between you saying you're the father and I have to have this fatherly, oversight, and I have to be stern and stoic and all of that. We need to be careful, and we need to make sure that there is a balance. In other words, make sure that your children know that you're available and approachable all the time. If there's anything that I have seen in Mrs. Pham's experience with her children, they can discuss anything. Permit me to say sex, anything. While I was bringing up children and I was sending my daughter to the boarding house the first time, I almost entered the ground just to mention the word sex. In short, I didn't mention it. I just was saying, that place, let them not touch. Look at where I'm coming from, and look at all the knowledge and the flexibility, and the way children are being brought up. I hope that the point I've tried to make is clear. So you hold that, because if I let you talk about that, then we can get back to the questions that we have. But I just wanted to put it out there. I understand your perspective, but I needed to put this out there also, that we need to have a balance and be careful when being African father figure. So the next question is for you, Dr. Ede. And I want my guests around the call to go back, understanding the difference between millennials, Gen Zs, and Generation Alpha. I know when I was, I asked you earlier on, without asking you, Dr. Ede, how old are you? I said, Dr. Ede, am I correct to say that you're a millennial? And you said you are. Completely. So you are millennial bringing up Generation A, right?
Yes.
Help us understand those three, and then I will come with a question. Mrs. Farms has accused me of overloading each question, so let me break it down. So please explain that, and then I will put a question out there to you.
Okay, so we'll start with millennials, right? So for us, we were the years is like from 1981, I believe, to like 1996, and that's the age range of those. So if you're born within that time frame, then you know that you are a millennial. Then for those who are born from 97 to all the way to 2012, I think 2012, 2013, 2012, right? That's the Gen Zs, right? And then from 2013 and up all to this present age, that's Gen Alpha. So again, the Gen Alpha generation, they're still too young, again, in terms of their values. One of the things that I feel is the defining factor with them, I always call it, by my own personal term, I call it web-on. They were born with, I don't say they were born with chips. So basically they are the generation that were born with the digital age. Everything has pretty much matured in a lot of its manifestations and whatnot. Millennials, I always feel that we are the luckiest generation. Why? Because we got to see everything. We got to see Michael Jackson, we got to see Tupac, we got to see the birth of video games, we got to see the birth of the internet, we got everything, like we pretty much experienced so much at the time when the world was transitioning from analog to the digital age.
Digital.
Whereas that's like the whole Y2K thing. I mean, obviously the Gen Z's experienced it, but they were still too young. Most of them were like 3, 4 at the time. Again, because to be Gen Z, you have to be from 1997. And Y2K, that was like 2000. So again, 3 years. They were too young to really understand. But then with the Gen Z's, the thing about them, is that what really defines them is that they grew up with smart devices as well. They much more than, you know, like we millennials, we were getting to the age where we could afford these things, but they grew up on this, so they are really, really sharp when it comes to things like tech. In terms of their educational system, we were raised by our parents who were boomers, right? We're raised to go to college, get a university degree, become a doctor, lawyer, whatever. That's, for example, like, see,
Get a job.
get a job, get a pension, right? But the Gen Zs, they don't want to hear that. You know, they were brought up on STEM in terms of education, like a STEM thing. So it's very deliberate in terms of, okay, I'm going to do sciences. So that's where you have this, you know, the coders, people who do lots of coding, lots of, you know, like their generation,
Creatives.
exactly, creative stuff. Their generation is very different. But again, Gen Alphas, they're too young, right? Or what it is that you would like to be, because again, they're too young. Most of them are what, 12 at most, right? So, or 11, 12 at this time, too young. In terms of our attitude to work, right? Again, based on the fact that we were so close, or we're directly influenced by the boomers, right? We prioritize things like, you know, work-life balance, as millennials, you know, work-life balance, things like pressures. But with Gen Zs, on the other hand, Gen Zs, they value flexibility and, you know, just give me my space, right? They are the kind of the generation, they call them the no nonsense generation. That's the thing about Gen Zs. You can't tell them, you know, how does it did this quarter.
So the Gen Alphas are the ones that were born right into technology from the stomach. Technology.
Exactly. That's why I call them web on. Like they're connected. Like their own is, and it's uncanny the level of intelligence that we have.
Okay, so let me go straight to the question. So now that you've described that, what specific care must parents that are parenting Generation Alpha children take? What children that are, you know, everything is techie, even from the womb, what care should they take?
The one thing I would say that they have to, and it's becoming a pandemic now in the case, is the digital thing where I call them web on, and that's the reason why I always use that term. I've not heard it anyway. It's just my personal definition.
Did you say weapon?
Web
Web born. Oh,
yes.
web. Yeah.
So
okay.
it's because they run the risk of being too dependent on technology. A friend of mine one time, he once said that, you know, we're going to give it to an age, the Gen Alphas, they'll probably give it to an age of cyborgs, right? And it's true. Think about it. Subconsciously, in terms of, not necessarily from a hardware perspective, but from a software perspective, more than half of us, even millennials right now, are under the same assault or plague. We are kind of like cyborgs. We cannot do without technology. We are addicted to technology. You get up in the morning, first thing you're going to go pick your phone. You have to get that dopamine hit. So with them, the risk is that they are getting this connectivity, this dependency from such an early age that it will be hard to break or to wean them off of it. Right? Most of the parents, especially like you have them, you know, parents that are, you know, Gen Zs now having the kids. The Gen Z parents too are starting to see what millennials and, you know, boomers were feeling like. Okay, look, this thing is not a joke anymore.
Beginning to experience it.
Exactly. And they're starting to see that the kids are too dependent on technology. There was a video I saw once on I think it was Instagram or so, where the child in her sleep, she was actually snoozing off, but in her sleep, she was still swiping.
I think I saw it too.
Right. So you understand, and that's how you bring an age of digital addicts. And it's gonna affect productivity. It's going to affect their self-esteem. It's going to affect so many different things, especially from a developmental standpoint. We now have cases of, you know, where ADHD, almost every child's ADHD. And check this, with my kids, you know, being Generation Alpha, I have to be very careful. And I found this out. I mean, I didn't read it anywhere, but one day I just realized that, okay, let me just watch these kids and see how they watch TV. Because now they have everything. They have Disney Plus, there's Hulu, they have everything. They have YouTube for kids. And you realize that these kids, they see something once, even on a tab, next thing, pam, I don't feel like, change next one to the next cartoon. Bam, less than 30 seconds, bam, to the next. The cartoon hasn't finished though, but they just keep changing. So now, on their own, they are reinforcing the lack of the ability to focus on a single task. So basically, ADHD.
So I hear you, Dr. Ede. So the problem is, well, I don't know which other word to use other than problem. Also, so the issue is that there's a big problem, and everyone around the call, including yourself and Mrs. Farms, the intention is to bring up children that can be useful to themselves and useful to the society. So there's this problem that you've described, and what I'm hearing you say is that we need to cut down on that. There needs to be like a step back. So what can parents do to make sure that their children are not doing this in their sleep?
So it's deliberate. There's a guy called Patrick Bet-Davis, and he's a very popular guy. And one of the things he says, he kind of like gamified the system in a way for his kids, in that, I come from a generation where we're not even allowed to watch TV. We started watching TV during the week and everything, but then they cut that off to every weekend. Eventually, it was video games because I was addicted, and they cut that off to every holiday. So I had something to look forward to. So with my kids now, one of the things that I've been trying to do, and I've been, I would say, half successful, but I've seen the results already within the past few weeks of doing it, is that we cut off TV for the week. We try our best to do that. And
do what?
Cut off TV.
You cut out TV
and everything for the week. And then you go to the local library, or where you can get like a thrift store, and buy tons of books on different subjects and everything, and get them to read. I realized just doing that alone, right, changed the way my son, because my son is very, 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 very active. He's too active. If anything, is like 3 kids in one, that kind of thing, right? So you have the thing that you once they start to study, it starts to help them focus their attention more, and that way they're able to sit still. They're able to interact with other kids a bit better, and you develop their ability for
to focus and to be off. So I hear you. We identified the problem, which you have described clearly by explaining to us Gen Z, Millennial, and Generation Alpha. Identify the problem. We know the problem is there. It's a problem, and if you're not careful, it has bad repercussions down the road. And I hear you saying parents must begin to go back to what we used to, what we faced, which was, like a timetable or scheduling around their access to TV. But the pressure is not just TV. There's the gadgets and all of that. So let's lump it all together. The Apple products or whatever distracts them, and just create a window for them to do alternative things. So the word is deliberate again, and parents around the call, and parents to be around the call. I don't know what generation, what will come after Alpha will be, but you have to be very careful to make sure that they balance, they're not addicted, and that you, as long as you can still put in that control, the one we used earlier on, then use it positively. I'll let you take a cup of water. Thank you so much, Dr. Ede. Mrs. Farms.
Yes, please.
Thank you so much. I'm very grateful to you for doing this with me, or with our community. The essence of the conversation is to ensure that parents don't make mistakes, and that from your successes, people can also do and have the testimony that you have about your children. The influences of our parents, when I say our parents, the parents of everybody around the call, the influences of our parents are very essential and are very important to who we have become, right? So whilst this is very important, why this is very essential, our parents, the upbringing that we had, I don't steal today because of the upbringing that I have. The question to you, Mrs. Farms, is how important is it for parents to be cautious and careful not to parent their children the way they were parented?
To start with, I think that parents of this generation of kids have to make informed decisions. They have to be educated in the affairs of the children. Like it's important to, I always say, it's my mantra that parents should just always try to create a balance between what they want and what the children want. But we cannot completely we cannot completely discard the techniques that our parents used in raising us. But what I think we parents of nowadays should do is to take the good techniques and combine with our own good techniques, because we can't completely eradicate or discard all the techniques
I like
that
that.
were
I like that. That is
Yes.
excellent. I like that.
We can't. And then in this age and time, we have to be, I'll say it again, informed. I have a friend that had to go learn coding. In fact, it was from her mouth I learned that you can learn coding at whatever age, because her children, every time, Mom, we're learning coding, we're learning coding. So all in all, I think we just need to like create a balance. I'm just always saying that between what we want and what the children want, and to be careful not to make the mistakes. Learn from the mistakes that our parents made, but take the good aspects or techniques that they used and use in raising our own kids.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Eden.
Yeah, I would just like to add, so thank you so much, Madam Funke. You nailed it all, because truth is, Chinua Achebe said, as the hunter has learned to shoot without missing.
If the bird has learned to
you understand? So,
indeed, so you have to learn.
Yeah, so we just have to modify the tools. Like, for example, in our case, or my case, when I messed up back in the day, I'll get a butt whooping, right? And what was the aim? To elicit pain in terms of consequences. So
my sister used to call it brain reset.
Exactly. But now with the kids, especially with Gen Alpha, so one of the things I did was it was because my son, he's again, you know him, right? He's very straight, he's a handful. So one of the things I did was that I realized, okay, fine, this guy likes tech, he's a very tech-driven kid. So I was like, Eddie, why don't you weaponize this thing? Weaponize it for parenting. So I realized, okay, fine. So sometimes during the week, especially when I know that I have to elicit a change because of the communication notes and stuff in school. So I'm like, okay. So I was like, dude, let me just let him play games for a little bit. We'll complete PlayStation. I'll play with him. He'll be so happy. Let it enter his body well. And then I take it from him. So now, two things. It was a form of control, but at least he now started to understand consequences. If you do this, the things that are precious to you, will take them away. And when we take them away, you will feel pain, and it is psychological too. So it's not even physical or anything. Like, okay, dude, I can't miss. And guess what? For the past 3 weeks now, he's been getting stellar reports from his teachers. Oh, he's doing so well. He's sitting there. I'm like, okay. Sometimes the next one will just be maybe like one candy that he likes. So we'll just get him on those and then start to take them. So eventually it's just adaptation. So thank you so much, Madam Funke. You nailed it all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Eden. My next question I also want to put to Mrs. Farms. What should parents do to avoid the sibling rivalry? And please, I want you to answer this question bearing in mind that I do have comments back from some participants, or they may not be on the call, but people who have signed up, saying sibling rivalry, that has run down, I mean, years. They're like from when they were little and now they're in the 40s and all of that. Yeah, so answer.
Coach.
Sir.
Is that my question or doctor's question?
Your question.
Coach, that's the jump question.
Oh, we have questions on the call. Thank you, Admiral Orie. Thank you, sir, for joining. You always encourage me. Thank you, sir. We'll take this question.
Sibling rivalry. Sometimes, a lot of times, exists from misconceptions or imaginations of the siblings. Mommy likes this person more than this person, or daddy likes that person more than this. Sometimes the parents are trying their possible best to love the children equally. But for me, I haven't really studied it, and it hasn't really come up in the course of my duty, except when there are cases in court, siblings coming to say, no, the house should not have gone to this person, or why is this person collecting, But I'll just go straight to the point. First of all, recognize and identify that children are different. and they have different skills, different talents, different blessings, different talent, you know, and then celebrate every win. I have a child that is a 9A1 student, 120 over 120 in IIT, 800 over 800 SAT, and I'm not making this up. She knows I'm not exaggerating. But her wins are as important to me as my child who came home with the medal for chess. The person who had 9A1s had 9A1s. And 9A1s don't mean more to me than the person. My medal, my chess medal, if I could be wearing on my neck, I'll be wearing on my neck. It's hanging on my door there. So I celebrate every win equally. And then again, I accept that each child is unique. I have a child that hardly talks. She will cry, cry, cry. I have another one that is so assertive that she has gone as far as asking me before, you think you're the only one that has the right to annoy people? When she said something to me, Mom, you're annoying me. I said, eh? I said, how can you say I'm annoying? So you think you're the only one who has the monopoly?
That was
to
an
annoy
abomination
somebody
in our time. You probably earn you facial marks.
But she said it. she said it. But children are unique. One person is expressive, another person is not expressive. Just be careful that they don't cross the border. They don't. They respect the boundary. They don't. You know. And then be consistent. If you're punishing a child for mixing Coke and Fanta in a cup, don't allow it. Don't allow it another child. Don't say because this one does not eat, he's not mixing Coke and Fanta. That one eats too much, and I beat him because he mixed a bottle of Coke and Fanta. Be consistent and be persistent, and be deliberate about corrections. Don't leave corrections for later. When you are correcting one child, what you have corrected one child for, correct another child for it. And if you're giving this child what you can afford, don't borrow money to give that child what you can, another child what you cannot.
I can see doctor hailing you.
Again, number one, you have to be emotionally intelligent because they can play you. These children can play you. In June 2023, my 3 children came together and said, Shebi, you said, I can't remember what it was, but the 3 of them accused me of the same thing, which was not a lie. You know, I'll say, oh, this one does not stress me. That I said it to 3 of them. The other 2 don't stress me. I have 3. So I've told one, the other 2 don't stress me. I've told the second one, the other 2 don't stress me. So in Canada, everybody came, they met me in a room. So you have said the same thing to all 3 of us.
I think, Mrs. Farms, thank you very much. I think I hear you. Be very consistent in your approach to them. Don't show favoritism. Appreciate the individuality. Yeah, communicate.
Communicate your actions.
Yeah.
Communicate. The reason why I called that person into the room was because I wanted to warn him, not because I wanted to make him special. Okay. The reason why I sent this person, my 3 kids.
So explain things to them, and so that there's no undertone. People are
there's
not
no misconception. That was the first thing I said.
Misconception. Okay. Thank you very much. We have, like I said, I think I will learn after this because this is a conversation. It's like I need to ask with each of you. I have questions around the call and I have comments around the call as well. We will get to questions very soon because I have to respect the fact that Admira already joined us. I will take his question. But I'll read a comment quickly from Sister Vivian, who is Mrs. Doctor. I think one of the ways to deal with this is to avoid comparison between children, encourage them, praise them, and help them recognize their strengths and deal with their weaknesses. Thank you so much, sis. Thank you so much for that. I have to run quickly, and I do have a comment also that says some lessons, children have to learn some lessons from experience. I think probably that had to do with a question an earlier question. Yeah, thank you, sis. Dr. Mrs. Toyin, thank you for that. Arubai. Let me not forget your surname. Now, I still have other questions for you, but we need to start wrapping up. So many questions. I'm going to push this question to Mrs. Farms, and why pushing it to Mrs. Farms. Okay, she was the last speaker. So Dr. Ede, take this. It's not a question, not Mrs. Farms' question, but there's a quick one. At what stage do you introduce personal hygiene? When do you start talking to your children about personal hygiene? You know, because this is very relevant for, you know, the confidence when they, and the jobs. We're talking financial freedom. We're talking parenting, financial freedom. We want them to nail the best jobs down the road. So at what stage? And what's the best, how do we go about this conversation?
From day one. I was from day one. From day one. Like the reason, so my family is very, if anyone, if you know my mom, you would know. If you know my wife, so it's from day one. And especially if you have girl children. See, that's again, we have to be careful. You know, personal hygiene is great for everybody. There's nothing worse than, or nothing damages the self-esteem more than you know, people say maybe your breath stinks, or you know, you have body odor or whatever. You know, no matter how accomplished you are, you will never feel confident in yourself. So from day one, you have to reinforce that with them. For girl children, it's even much more so, because again, there's nothing worse than a woman who's, again, you guys have more hormones dealing with yourselves. You guys have more, you know, so that alone is even much more necessary. A man can always have his whatever. Eventually, he can tame him. It's like a wild animal. Eventually, he can always, right? No disrespect, but you
I
know,
know.
yeah, but it's much more so from day one. I would say train them as kids. Just start to show them, you know, healthy habits. Wash your hands. It starts from there. Okay. You know, wash your hands after you use the bathroom. Before you eat anything, wash your hands. It may seem like overkill at when they're young, but I tell you that as they grow, they will now start to find a fine balance. But you realize that the foundation is set, and they will grow up with that, because that would be normal for them. So as early as possible, I say.
Thank you very much, Doctor. So parents around the call, parents to be, Lady Dorcas, the latest bride or wife around the call, take notes from day one, start teaching them about hygiene. Mrs. Farms, quickly to your question, how would you, or at what stage do we need to start teaching our children about emotional things? I mean, about romance, love. One of the comments I had around, from the, you know, the registration is some people face heartbreak and they don't know how to handle it. They make decisions from the heart. And sometimes these decisions are bad. Most bad decisions come from the heart. Decisions should be made.
Yes.
Decisions should be made with the head.
The head, yes.
What should parents do to help their children understand how to handle heartbreaks from so-called love, and to help them understand love? I think this question is around heartbreak and how do you prepare your children to deal with disappointments around relationships. Sorry, I used the wrong word, romance. I meant relationship.
Well, relationships are part of our daily lives, and as soon as the child becomes compost mentis, as soon as you understand yourself and you know yourself, you should begin as parents. Well, for me, I'll use myself as an example. The moment my children start to understand, you know, their left from their right, I begin to, you know, explain to them, not forcefully, you know, but in a subtle manner, which is why I said parents should learn how to be FBI agents. You know, just introduce it, tell your stories, tell other people's stories. I'm reading a book and I look up and I say, imagine what this person did. Or I'm watching a movie and I say, but I try as much as possible to be truthful. I don't sugarcoat anything. I make them understand that, you know, certain things happen, and if those kind of things happen, I mean, it's not the end of the world. But again, I tell my children, I give them practical examples. I tell them stories from what I experienced. Like, I can come back from the office now and tell my 13-year-old daughter, a 13-year-old girl was raped. What I experienced in the office, I tell her why, not to scare her, but for her to be careful. Even though it appears that the nature of my job sometimes makes me paranoid. But I share experiences with my children. I tell them to be careful. I try as much as possible to teach them to protect themselves. And I never eliminate the God factor. Always pray and make sure you're sensitive and obedient to the Holy Spirit. There's only so much a parent can do, you know. But I don't hide the possibility of a heartbreak or somebody disappointing you or somebody falling your hand or those kind of things. But my
serving you breakfast, like they call it.
Yes.
I'm
And
current, so Dr. Ede, you're joking with me.
I encourage my children to talk to me. I encourage my children to talk to me. My last child is 16. When she had a best friend of the opposite gender, I encouraged him to be coming to my house. I encouraged him to be coming to my house.
You also prayed for him until he left the country, and you testified that he had left. Anyway, I want Dr. Ede to talk. Dr. Ede, please say something about this.
Okay.
How can we prepare our children not to take disappointments to heart?
You have to start early. One of the things that I found is that they have to go through, like someone, the person in the comments.
In the comments, that from experience, right?
Yes. So it's not all experience that is the best teacher. It takes real wisdom to learn from the experience of others. So what you have to do is to also reinforce that you've gone through this thing. You're just like them. You've gone through the heartache. You've gone through all those things, and then let them understand how to deal with it. Like, for example, again, with Gen Alphas, right? They are a generation that believes, I won't say cold hard data. Like they need to see evidence. So one of the things that I've also done is you leverage technology. For example, oh, don't do this. Like my son is so weird because my son yesterday, was it this morning? It was like, man, because my kids call me doctor. It's weird.
Yeah, I noticed. I'm like,
oh, doctor, right? And then anytime my girls when they want to manipulate me, they'll call me dad, right? So it's weird. So when my son came this morning, it's like, man, doctor, guess what? Right? Because he calls it Lolo as his testicles up, my balls didn't cook. I was like, oh, nice. Fine. So he slept with boxers. So I told him to always make sure he sleeps because he's a young man. He needs the airflow, right? So it's like, man, so I told him that if you wear tight clothes and wear everything, guess what?
Advantages of having a medical doctor father.
So it's going to cook. So he just went, I mean, doctor, he didn't cook and everything. I was like, oh, good. Right. Right. So what I'm saying is you have to let them know. So you show them, okay, this is how people, if you're heartbroken or whatever, look at example. But how do I know? Okay, let's go and watch a YouTube video. Don't gamble, for example, because you end up losing money, you end up whatever. How do you know this? Let's go and watch a story from someone who suffered it, and they watch it on YouTube, and they're like, wow, okay, doctor, that's real. So it reinforces that because they've seen hard data that this person went through this thing, it went south, right? Same thing with disappointments. My daughter, my first one, she has an entrepreneurial streak like her mom and I. So sometimes in school, she just make like, trinkets, rubber band stuff and everything. And she'll just go to school and she'll sell it for like 25 cents, whatever, 100 cents. So she's 9. She's always thinking about business and everything. One day I told her, I said, look, I was like, doctor, I need to make money and I understand. I was like, yeah, I understand. But, focus on process. It's like, but doctor, I said, focus on process. I said, like, okay, so I use an analogy. Sorry to gross anybody out. I said, see, whatever you do, there's always an outcome. For example, if you eat all the food and everything, you're still going to use the toilet anyway. No matter what you do, when you keep eating, it will still go and do number 2, right? And that's how money and happiness and joy and everything is. Focus on the process. What is it that you are going to eat? Eat the right things. And even if the pool comes out, it's going to come. If money is going to come, it's going to come. But the quality of what you imbibe and what you stand for, that is what will always help you with your emotions. And another thing too is also breathing exercises. My daughter, again, because prior to when we came out to Canada, I was thinking about it. Of millennials now, you have the Gen Zs as well. You have tons of unscrupulous people too, who are the Yahoo boys and whatever. They have money too, and they send their children to the same school that your kids are going to, and they're coming with different sets of values. Okay, so whenever you feel that sort of thing, how do you change that when they bully you, disappointment, emotions or whatever? So you have to reinforce that with them and let them know, look, These are what your values are. When someone like this has, or something happens to you, you have to learn self-control. Don't let them see a side of weakness. When you want to cry, for example, you can go and cry in private or whatever. Don't cry out there and let them know they've control. Self-control, breathing exercises. My daughters, it really helps them in controlling themselves. If they're just bursting out. So there's a wide spectrum.
So many things. I'm learning so much, and I hope that my friends around the corner are also learning. There's some words that I've just been using over and over, either directly or from the narratives. We've talked about communication. Mrs. Pham used being informed. You just talked about YouTubes and all of that. Being in touch with your children, being open, and balancing things out. Those are some of the things that we've mentioned around the call. Now I will pause with my own questions quickly. Thank you so much, Madam Bumi Awoyemi. Thank you. She says, I think building their self-esteem and self-worth helps to see themselves bigger than any situation. So if we build their confidence and let them know who they are, today's call is not from the Christian or faith angle. If we were taking it from the Christian or faith angle, of course, some of the examples we'll be taking will be driving this home. But I do agree with her. You have to believe in yourself. If a man says, I'm calling off an engagement, it's not because you are less of a person that you are, but it's not going to benefit you. Doctor, let me just read this and I'll come back to you. She also says, also, never expect too much from anyone so you don't break with the disappointment. So you don't break with the breakfast. Joshua, you can laugh again. Okay, Dr. Eda, you're going to say something.
I love that. And I love what Madam Bumi said. I just wanted to say something. So one of the things I came to understand in my years of study and interaction was the difference between value and worth. And that's one thing that we often use them interchangeably. But value is objective it's from an external perspective. So for example, I see someone with a value is the HR, your person's value is just an accountant, whatever. That's the external appreciation of what that person stands for or embodies. But worth is intrinsic, it's from within. That's much more subjective appreciation. So that's why I love what she said, self-worth. They need to understand that they are unique in this universe. I don't tell my kids this aspect, but since we're adults here, so we have kids and everything, it's just even from an existential standpoint, every single one of us on this call is worth more than anything else. Matter of fact, from the sexual perspective, when our parents did do and whatever, right? Out of a single, this is medicine now, from a single ejaculate, right? You have 500 and something million, 300 to 500 unique identity, but you are the one that came out. That is so in terms of probabilities, that is mind-boggling. So you are worth more than anything, right? And it takes an appreciation. So this is why with parents, we need to understand that these kids are unique and find out what is it that makes them confident in who they are, and we reinforce that you're unique in your own right. That's why with the Yoruba tradition, I'm not a Yoruba guy, but there's this thing about eulogies and whatnot, orikis and whatnot. Yeah, where a child had. So those are the things that help to boost the esteem. Let the child feel a sense of uniqueness and pricelessness, right? So as parents, we have to reinforce that. Now, in the age we are in, right? Again, which is also someone mentioned in the comments about absentee parents. It's a very serious thing because
yes. So, doctor, while you're at it, please take the question because that's what I was going to ask you next. How do you take care of situations where you have absentee fathers or mothers or both?
Honestly, it's a very sad situation where both of them are not available. But the way the world is going today, right, is that the systems now in Nigeria is not even so, or even Africa, it's not much a bad situation, as bad as it is out here in the West, right? Where the West, it is a system designed to deliberately keep parents away, right? The first time the thing happened to me that really scared me was when we first came here, and then we talked to the school district, and they're like, look, because your kids have to come here, and then for the kids programming, I understand in the context of whatever, but my mind programming, it holds a very heavy weight. You're trying to program them, didn't say
Can you
teaching.
explain that? What
Yeah.
does that mean?
So programming basically with the kids is that basically what their entire curriculum is, and then having to teach them and set their their behavioral patterns in a certain way. That is the programming. So ask yourself, if the values that are being taught in schools erodes or is in contradiction to what we have as well, based on maybe our unique values, parental values, religious values, whatever, then there's going to be a conflict. And the child, if you went to elephants fight, the child, the grass suffers, the child will be confused. So how do you reinforce these things? It's a very, very dicey situation. So you have to really know. So when absentee parents are there is nobody for that child to glean the values or the essence of the values from. So for example, that's why, the best thing is, as parents, in situations of that, if the parents truly love their child, I would tell you this. The world, there's a million ways to skin a cat. There's more than a million ways to get financially successful and literate and whatnot. You have to start small, but you have to be deliberate in that. What are the vocations? For example, I always tell young guys that I mentor, you want to do this. Okay, what is your end goal? Do you want something that you're just going to take you away from your family, or do you want something that's going to give you the time to do with them? For example, I have a friend who all he does is trade the stock market, right? And between the morning time, he's a day trader. Between the morning time and 12, he's done. He makes about 1,000 USD every day. Done by 12. So at the end of the day, he's like, okay, the reason why he chose that, he's a medical doctor as well. Despite the fact that he's a medical doctor and everything, he's like, look, he chose that so that it's hard. So it's how he says, it's the hardest way to make easy money, day trading, right? But he chose that, learned the rudiments. It took him about 3 years plus, almost 5 years, if you account the time he was learning, to become, where he is now. But that has given him so much time. He has time to homeschool his kids. He has time to, he's just there. So if you know that these children, because they are our legacies, they are our future, if that child is important to you, then you have to find some sort of vocation or business or whatever that would afford you the time or the flexibility of one of the parents at least being at home to nurture the children. If not, the education system is weird. These kids, they leave the house in the morning, they spend 8 hours with teachers whose values you do not even know, and then they come back home. You're not back from work, you come back at 8, you only see them rub their head and you go to sleep. So now, in essence, your kids are being trained or raised by people with different values than yours. So when they start to act aberrantly and differently, you wonder where all this happened. Again, absenteeism. So we have to be deliberate. Find a vocation. It may not be now that you can say, okay, that can give me time. I may not. There's a sacrifice. I may not be able to get enough money on that thing right now, but if I can be there for them, it'll give me some time, and eventually I'll start to segue into something a bit more, profitable.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you so much. I want Mrs. Farms to talk about this question because I hear your explanation, and thank you very much for the dimension that you took it from, because you took it from the dimension of the career, taking parents away from the children. Mrs. Farms sees a lot of cases and all of that, and I don't know the context in which Admiral Ore wanted us to really break this down. But Mrs. Farms, situations where because of what's that English word now? Parents, the couple, they not being compatible, and so they just can't live together. So one has to be away. It's not a matter of I can. When it's an unusual career, like Doctor has explained, what can be done? How do you take care of situations where you have absentee fathers or both?
Absentee parents by circumstances or because of the job? I need to understand the question.
Yeah, so Doctor has explained by the job, and I'm saying other circumstances, Do you have anything to add to that? Is there anything you want to add to that, or should we go to another question? Because Doctor has answered it, the way he understands.
I would want to add, I would want to add that there are two sides to the situation. To a coin. Like right now, technology has made it, even though it can never be, I mean, if it's not Panadol, it's not the same thing as Panadol. It can never take the place of
You are giving them airtime here.
It can never take the place of the parents being physically present, but technology has made things easy. I have a husband that does 2 weeks on and 2 weeks off, but he calls at least once every day. He talks to the children, he gives directives and and stuff like that. So you can be present without being present. Phone calls, Zoom meetings like this, text messages, and all that. You can do what you're supposed to do when you're absent, even if you're without being physically present.
Okay, let me add a little bit of context to it. Yeah, Doctor, I'll come to you. Mr. Kule Adisa joining us from New Jersey. Please, you're going to speak next. I've already allowed you to speak, but I want them to deal with this question and get to the bottom. Now, quickly, Mrs. Farms, and I'll come back to Doctor on this again. This Admiral Ure's question is Harvard standard. So someone is pointing out that could it be as a consequence of separation or divorce? So they start parenting together, and then they have to start living apart.
Okay, in the case of where parents, the relationship has irretrievably broken down, and parents have to be, have to live separately. Depending on the ages of the children, like if the children are young, toddlers, it is usually preferable for them to be with the mothers if the mother is fit and proper. If there's nothing, if she's mentally capable, she's not insane, she's not a drug addict, she's not mad, if she's normal, it is better for the younger children. It is in the best interest of the children that they stay with their biological mothers. And then as they grow older, if they're able to
I can see Doctor shaking his head.
No, that's
I can see Doctor shaking his head. I have an example where the gentleman, he's American, he had to go and get a babysitter. The woman just walked away.
Because the woman was not fit. If the woman is not fit, the court will not direct for the children to stay with her. If she's not fit, if she's a drug addict.
This is a friend, someone that we know. We stayed with him in America. It wasn't a matter of court. The woman walked away, and he had his children. He had to get a big elderly nanny to come and be mother to them. Doctor, please go ahead.
So thank you so much, Madam Funke. Again, in your capacity, obviously dealing with the legal space and dispute resolution and whatnot. What I've found, based on my research, and there's tons of research to back this up, is that it's unfortunate when divorce and separation does happen due to irreconcilable differences. But what I've found is that kids that grow up with a single father household as opposed to a single mother end up doing much better in life. Like, it's weird how
seriously.
Yes, there's tons of studies that have been proven that.
So you're talking statistics now.
Statistics, yes.
Interesting.
Again, not because the mothers are bad parents in any way, no. But like I said, in terms of the role, there's an emotional cadence that, or in terms of breadth that the mothers have, but then there's a depth that the fathers have. They don't have the breadth of managing those emotions, but they have a certain depth that kind of structures those children and grounds them a bit more. So it's, again, statistics. That said, the most important thing is I come from, again, the millennial generation, and again, we've gleaned wisdom from the boomers, right? Where you talk about grandfathers giving you or grandmothers giving you proverbs and whatnot. It takes a village to raise a child. So now the one thing is that if in a circumstance where there's a single parent household, either father or mother, it doesn't matter. If the parents can be made aware, again, which is why I must thank you for this forum, can be made aware, you need to get some sort of social support. Now, it doesn't have to be from the government, paying your money, but there has to be maybe like some sort of familial support around you to create the framework of a village for that child to be raised off of. Because when they're getting only a set of values from you, there's no how. The single parent will harbor a lot of bitterness if it wasn't done in an amicable way. right? And even if it was done in an amicable way, there's no how. There's always going to be seeping of emotion. So you have seeping emotions, and eventually the person could project that onto the child, either through punishment or certain things. But when there's a village, or there's a village sort of setting, there's family, maybe grandma is here, grandpa is there, like something, uncle, auntie, like they stay around. Even the uncle, auntie, you have to be very careful because of predators in certain families. So that's another thing too.
Yeah,
But
I'm sure Mrs. Pams has seen a lot of that.
exactly. So when grandparents, they can two things. One, they are arbiters of this.
Sorry, Dr. Ede, coincidentally, someone just posted a question saying, what's the role of grandparents in all of this?
Beautiful. So I'll just say so grandparents, especially if they're still together, there's no how. The fact that they've stayed together through the entire time means that there's tons of experience, right? That they can pass off to their child whilst you're out working and whatnot. And the thing is, in Yoruba always say there's this thing, they say Omodo Agba, right? Right? You grew up with the elders. I've seen kids who grew up with their grandparents, my friends especially, they often have a certain kind of wisdom where you're too mature for your age. Doesn't mean that they won't, and the parents in turn will still help them bring them out of that whole level of forced maturity, but then still help them live their age at the same time. So they are wiser than their peers, and they have more of the age-long or lasting values that the grandparents would have instilled in them whilst bringing them up as well. So it's a mixed bag, but then that's what I feel a person who is a single parent should seek for. Seek for a village that
support.
Yes, support is the only way I say that child can have some sort of holistic upbringing as opposed to something totally biased and skewed.
The truth of the matter is, thank you very much, Dr. Ede. The truth of the matter is that that question is a session on its own. It's a very, very sensitive one. I know Mrs. Pams may still have some comments on this particular question, but we're running out of time. I want Mr. Kunle Adisa to speak. You can unmute yourself, Kunle. He's joining us from New Jersey, and he has, please, when you speak, tell us the age of your children before you ask your question or your comment. Thank you.
Yeah, good day, everyone. My name is Kunle Adisa. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, so I think the first time I met our coach BK, was about 25 years ago, back in the days of Shell. And I don't know what made me gravitate to her, and she has been a wonderful sister ever since. I have 3 daughters. Their age range is
Kule, don't tell me you're asking your wife the age range, because that's what happens. You're muted, Kule. Or did I do anything? Kule, you're muted.
Perhaps it's connection.
No.
I'm back. Sorry.
You're back. You went to ask your wife their ages. We know.
No, she's not here. I'm the only one at home now. I have a 16-year-old. I have a 12, and I have an 8-year-old.
Okay,
and,
8 to 16.
Yeah, I have a 16. She'll be 17, and I know what I'm dealing with her is different from what I'm dealing with the 13 and the 8. They are two. The 3 of them have different needs, and the way they handle things is completely different. So, but I had a situation some time ago. My middle girl, the one that is 13-year-old, was racially abused twice. We live in US, and in our elementary school, one of our classmates said something to her that she's not supposed to be able to talk to another person because she's of a different color. I got the call. I was a bit on the other side that is not how, because the way they made the way they reported the case to me was she made a racially abused, she abused somebody racially. So I was on the head that how can it happen? In my house, we don't discriminate. Everybody is trained equally. So I got there and I asked them, what happened? She said this. Can I see the girl that did this? They said, oh, no. They are not going to allow me to see her because of privacy and all sort of things. I said, no problem. But my daughter was able to tell me the person. And with that, I said, okay, no problem. I will look for the father or the mother of this child. And by looking at them, I'll be able to assess the situation, whether to talk to them or not. That one grand. But when she came home and I asked her, why do you think you are different? Because I sat at the two of them, the two older ones, I sat them down. Oh, it's because I don't have long hairs. My hair is coily like yours. Mom, okay, in that case, no problem. Look at your mom. What kind of hair does she have? Like yours, right? Does she look beautiful? Yes. What about your daddy? Daddy have a very low cut, no problem. But you know what I do have? Yes. I made them to understand that they are wonderfully made. Everything about them is unique. Whatever people say about them does not define who they are. It's what they say about them that matters. If they say they are good and they're acting that way, that means they're good. And that is one thing I try to work with them on. My question today is very simple. We are in a different environment. How do we manage our children when our upbringing conflicts the society that we find ourselves in? Can somebody answer that?
Thank you very much, Kule. Thank you very much. Doctor will answer it because he has he's living, or he lived between both places. I know Mrs. Farms has traveled widely as well, but living here, please give your perspective, your response to that.
So thank you so much, sir, for that. And I'm so sorry about what your daughter had to endure. Such is the nature of having to be immigrants into another country. And I won't fool myself or fool anyone here to say that these things don't exist. But it's weird, but I take a sort of contrarian approach to things. Where everybody says, we're just gonna sing by the bonfire, kumbaya. No. So I'm raising my kids with a bit of a chip on their shoulder, right? In the sense that you are different to these people. Because, for example, you're different to the Canadians, right? In the same way, how Black Americans is weird, because even Black Americans definitely try to segregate themselves from African immigrants, right? So and I'll tell you that I've noticed, based on understanding culture, what is culture really? Culture is the stories that the people tell themselves. So what have people been what is narrative like? So the first thing, when I raise my kids with the chip on their shoulder, the first thing is that, again, because I have 3 Gen Alpha kids, right? So what I do is empirical data. So things like, you're beautiful, my kids are all totally Black from Nigeria. So what I do, I look at Black don't crack, I reinforce that. Oh, look at everybody, different ages. Wow. Look at your skin. They didn't crack. Wow, she stays so nice looking. So see, you have the same skin, right? So all of a sudden, there's a confidence now, and it's not a pseudo kind of confidence. It's actually real confidence backed by data that they see. Oh, who are the most successful immigrants in the US in terms of recent age? Nigerians. What are Nigerian accomplishments? Bam, 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 bam. And I let them say, okay, I'm Nigerian too. All of a sudden, bam. If you look at social things like the whole Burna Boy and all those things, even though like I'm a Christian, I know those things, but look at the strides that these guys are hitting, and they're doing these things. So I'm like, you're Nigerian, one of them. So all of a sudden, there's a sense of identity that, okay, look, I'm not downcast from anybody. I'm not whatever. And that helps to reinforce confidence in them. And then as a parent, you now reinforce the fact that, okay, look, these things will happen. What do you do when they do happen? First things first, don't be confrontational in trying to, have say or anything back to them. My daughter, whenever this kind of thing happens, my daughter says, it's weird. My firstborn, she'll say, don't worry, she's going to work for me one day. It's weird, because why I'm saying this is because we come from a culture where we have all of the, there's a hunger, especially from those who are immigrants, like first generation, like myself. There's a hunger that we possess based on the fact that a lot of things amenities and things were lacking. The problem is that when our kids grow up in this environment, they are not exposed to that kind of hunger, but we as parents have to reinforce that hunger in them so that they don't have that edge. Because at the end of it, life is, you're about to say, there's no how. It's all a struggle. From your first breath, that's why the child cries, because of the pain of the lungs opening, right? So everything is destroyed. If you understand that context, that look, we're on this earth to strive. And that's why I love, what coach is saying in terms of the financial, we have to strive for more, to be more, right? And it's nobody's going to hand that to you on a platter. So the way we have to do is reinforce each other, build community, right? A community that reinforces that. So what support communities do we have for the children that we say, okay, fine, these children, like in Kingston here, there's this thing that the kids do in Queen's University every Saturday or every few Saturdays, is STEM thing for Black kids. So they go and they learn things. So that's the kind of community you want to reinforce. They come back home, encourage them to do the same. So like my daughter, her first business venture, I bought that. And she asked me, well, how much is it? I said, I'm going to pay $20 for that. I want you to reinvest that by $20. And I did that. So guess what? Now she's all about investing. I told you, you're going to face rejections. You're going to face it. Daddy, don't worry. Don't worry. I'm going to make it better. So now, those are kind of things. So with your daughter, the first thing is help her acknowledge the fact that truly these things exist. There's no point. We can't hide them. But then again, why is she different? Because she is unique. And her uniqueness is what's going to make her once she understands and owns that, they can't use it against her. Matter of fact, they want it because look at it. Do you see how not pervasive, but how permeative the Black culture is? Everybody in Japan, you have K-pop now, all the boys are trying to do boy band. Boys to Men started that stuff, or New Edition, they started that stuff, right? Look at the other, so there's no how. It's all about trying to, I won't say cultural appropriation, but everybody wants to be what we have. So we have to reinforce what we have, build a community around what we have, and then help them understand. Eventually, that confidence will come to a point that it's image, and you now have to have a different a struggle now in that, so that they will not get arrogant and cocky, right? So they stay humble. So as a parent, but you have to get them. You might have to overshoot, and then you now start.
So I hear you, Doctor. You're saying we have to be very deliberate about this, and I so much like this your comments, because I'm not bringing up young people outside the country like you are, you and Kule are, but you're saying we must not lose the values of home, and just like Mrs. Bumiawoyemi said earlier on, build a confidence into them. Her comments about confidence was when we were talking about relationships and heartbreaks. But you are saying that our children need to be told how valuable they are, especially in a different community where they are different. And I hear you very clearly. We shouldn't sugarcoat it. We shouldn't hide it. We must accept that we are different, but not in any inferior or negative way. It's just that we are different. And so these differences will come up along the way, even in the way, they speak, in the way they speak. Even when you're born here, your accent, can be different. So yeah, thank you very much. I would love to ask Mrs. Farms about investment and teaching children about financial fitness. But I have one of my, coaches also have coaches and they have mentors. I have one of my coaches around the call who would have been wondering at when Finance Coach BK will ever learn to manage and keep events within time. He's coaching me in that respect, but it seems like I'm here to learn. So we're running out of time, but I anticipate this for very good conversations and topics. Now, Mrs. Bumiawoyemi, in response to your comments earlier on, Dr. Ede and Mrs. Farms, she says, village raising children these days is scary with pedophiles everywhere. Mrs. Farms can talk about all the cases that she sees, and Dr. Ede alluded to it earlier on, there are pedophiles around. So she says village raising children these days is scary with all the pedophiles everywhere. Beyond parents and grandparents, you're on your own. Those are the people you can genuinely trust. But I would like to add and punctuate that with saying even within parents and grandparents, don't say you don't know that pedophiles can't exist. You can only speak for yourself and the Holy Spirit. You're on your own, she says. This further compounds the parenting task. Yet, economic issues won't let mothers stay at home, or fathers, Mrs. Oyemi, or fathers to stay at home to nurture like our parents did. And then she says, thank you very much, Dr. and Mrs. Fangs, for the great insights. Quickly, I have a comment from Dr. Mrs. Saruba Itoyin from Manchester. She joined us from Manchester. She says, I remember the lesson I learned from my dad got me my first job in the UK. I remember being asked if I thought I could do the job, and I answered the people doing it, and I answered that the people doing it have one head like me. So yes, build confidence in your child. You know, I know her very well, and let me be honest, she's my sister, she's my biological sister, and we have 4 daughters. So one of the things our parents told us and taught us while growing up is that, guys, Dr. Ede and Mr. Kulia decided they don't have 2 heads. And so we were, told to be as competitive as men. I started washing cars wearing what we call, they say you don't call it shorts or knicker, but I used to wear short knicker, and I would wash my father's car because I didn't want my father as a teenager. When you live in the GRA in those days, you see some boys washing their parents' cars. I didn't want them to feel that they didn't have a male child, and so I would wear short knicker. Generation Alpha, I'm sorry if you don't know what short knicker means, and I will be washing the car. So, but we were taught to raise our heads up and be as confident as possible. So if there are some key words that we have learned around the call, if you can chat, ladies and gentlemen around the call, please put the key words that you learned from the conversation with Dr. Ede and Mrs. Fams. Please put some single words or comments or sentences, but single words. I have confidence. Mrs. Aweyemi talked about confidence, just like the guest today. I have confidence, communication, I have self-control, I had self-control. There was also self-respect. So please just put whatever you can in the chat box. Now, let me see. Admiral Ori, I've allowed you to unmute if you want to say something to us. Because let me see around the call, you're probably the only grandfather or grandfather to be around the call. Let's see. Yes, so we have mostly millennials. Dami, I see you. Thank you for joining. And Bosse Gule, thank you for joining. I can see you both. So Admiral Sir, do you want to say something to us, or you're remaining quiet after giving us Harvard question? Thank you very much. Funke, I will wait for Admiral Ore to speak if he wants to speak or not. I'm coming back to Mrs. Farms, and I would then ask Dr. Ede to give us his closing remarks. And my friends around the call, if anybody wants to say anything, you can just let me know in the chat box. How do you teach your children about money, and what financial fitness tips do you instill in them? I've heard that from Dr. Ede and his daughter, who is an entrepreneur and all of that. I want to hear from you, Mrs. Farms.
I try to make my children understand that money does not come easy. You have to work for money, you have to earn money, and the people that are bankrolling your life right now work hard for that money. And I also try to make my children understand that 1 kobo that is earned honestly is much more than 1 billion that is earned through the back door. And I know
who your father is. I know why you're
I know, right?
I know who your father is. Yeah.
So I try to, because we're in an environment, as Doctor said, where a lot of unscrupulous people, and their children are going to school with our own children. I called my son. I said, look, when my son was going to college, I said, look, in our family, we don't have that luck. It is not a blessing. It is not a grace. It is luck. In our family, we don't have that luck. If you do anything illegal, you will not finish it. They will catch you. And I've been telling him that thing right from when he was small. I started telling him when he was in White Sands. I said, look, you don't have to be like all these other people. You don't have to wear what they wear. You don't have to. And truly, God helped me. The first time he tried to take pizza to school to go and sell, they caught the boys before him. And he came home and said, Mom, you're right. We don't have that luck in our family. And I also teach them at a very young age to even aspire to earn. What does not belong to you does not belong to you, coach. Is that not how Dad raised us? What does not, another person's money is not your own.
Am I related to you?
What? I'm sorry. So What is not your own is not your own. Work for your own, earn your own money. And whatever little it is that you get, God will bless it. You don't have to have as much as all the other people around you. And then again, at a very young age, when they could listen to me without arguing, I taught them to earn money for themselves. As your parents, I owe you a pair of shoes. I owe you t-shirts. I owe you clothes. But I don't owe you Nike and Adidas. You want Nike, you work for it. You want Adidas, you work for it. So my children at a very young age, in fact, I stopped having house helps, living house helps a long time ago, like about 9-10 years ago. I have housekeepers who come once in a while, like once a week. So when the housekeepers don't come, my children work and they earn money. You want Nike, earn the money. The housekeeper is going to collect, like in those days, they used to collect like maybe 5K per session. Do the work. Do the work and earn your money. Or come and massage my back and I will pay you what I would have paid at the spa. Come and pull my toes, do my pedicure. My daughters, before they grew older than me, used to change my polish, do my cuticles and all that. But learn to earn your own money, and they know. First year in college, my son got a job. I had to beg him that, look, we did not send you to go and work. We sent you to go and school. But he knew. And right now, he knows the I don't want to use the word value, the worth of his ability to be able to earn. So, and I also teach them, you don't swallow everything you make. I tell them, have you forgotten all you've learned from Coach BK? So I borrow money from my children when I can't find my ATM. So I borrow money from them. Yeah. Yes.
So I hear you. So you're teaching them practical examples of how to earn, how to save, and it works. Yes. Thank you for sharing this. Thank you for sharing this. Doctor, when should we start teaching our children or exposing our children to financial literature?
Immediately.
You know, tech world and all of that. And what deliberate things can we do to make sure that our children begin to understand? I like that you said your young son knows when it goes green and red, so you're already teaching those things. But tell the people around the call.
I'll tell you immediately. And I'll tell you, I'm from a family where, my parents, they raised us to their own benefit. I said they raised us to not worry about money. You know how it is when you, as a parent, you have struggled through life. You weren't born with a silver spoon, and then especially your generation said, I want me. They would never suffer. But the truth is, I found that a bit of lack, or at least the appearance of lack, is such a blessing to any child. Because when did you
Can you say that again?
A bit
of appearance of lack.
Lack is such a blessing to any child. And I'll tell you, because when they understand that everything comes at a cost. So I've been teaching my children the concept of costs. Everything that they do, in order to have this burger that you ate, do you know a chicken had to die, or a goat had to die, or whatever? I'm serious, because life is...
There's nothing free, even salvation. Christ paid with his blood.
That is it. So once you understand the appreciation of what cost is, you will know that nothing is free. And in order to get what I need to get, you have to weigh the cost. What is it going to take? And that's what my daughter's always been thinking. So what is it going to take me to get this? Okay, doctor, I have to get rubber bands. I don't know how much, like 50, 25 cents. What about this other gum and everything? I said, oh, you're putting the cost together. She's like, yes. So when you understand the concept of costs, and even at a young age, they start to get it. They start to think much more critically about finance. Again, coming from somebody who wasn't raised with the luxury of understanding what finance came from. Again, my parents, my dad especially, he suffered. He was a houseboy. He did whatever. So he's like, my children will never. It was good. But when I got to school, I realized that if I continue being 100% dependent, I'm going to be ruined, right? So which is why I had to start lying on my own, trying to lean on my own inclinations. Second thing is education from the parents. If the parents don't have the education of finance, seek out two things. They say you want to hide something from a black man or a person of color, put it in a book.
Put it in a book.
No. But the way the world is right now, and I always tell people, when I started learning, finance and whatever, I was so obsessed, about it that if I'm driving a car, most people after work, oh, maybe just put a new Burna Boy. Music is not my business. Look as I'm making their money. I'll put an audiobook. So the 2 hours in traffic, I've listened to something, I've gained the time. Right? Like it or not, 1 or 2 lines must have stuck in my mind. The same way when I'm coming back. So that's 4 hours, 2 hours to traffic, because our office was in Ozumba at the time. So 2 hours in traffic to Ozumba, I've listened to an audiobook on finance. On my way back, 2 hours again. So if I'm getting 4 hours on average every day, 4 hours times 5, that is 20 hours worth of education that I'm getting that some of my peers are not. Right? So you see how it compounds. So you have to expose yourself to this. Eventually, you will find your center and the kind of thing you would like to do in terms of finance. You want to create a business. If you have an entrepreneurial streak, then seek out a mentor. I always say that a mentor will cut your journey, the length of your journey, to a quarter of what is possible, because then they know the desert paths. They know exactly where the pitfalls are. They know things you should look. I mean, I know when I first started, another venture of mine was an animation company. If you look it up on YouTube, it's called Spordust. Right? So we did an animation. We did stuff with P Square, Timmy Dakolo, all the guys.
What did you call it?
Spordust. That was the company. We've closed it down.
You want to put it in the chat box later?
Yes, I'll just put it. You can check on YouTube and see. Yeah, so Spordust Media, right?
Spordust. Okay.
Yes, tons of stuff in terms of animation and whatnot. And when we started, right, my mindset was, look, we're going to put Nigeria on the map. So again, it was all about wanting to do things differently, and then it failed eventually, but the lessons I learned and the people that it opened me to. For example, we had a few people, like Tommy Davis. I don't know if anyone knows Tommy Davis, TD, from Super Striker again. A few other people that kind of mentored us and eventually helped us to level up and see. And believe it or not, the lessons I gleaned from those men and women were the things that kind of set the foundation for me to develop. So you will never, man is a function, or mankind or humankind is a function of exposure. If you expose yourself to quality education, quality mentors, then you would glean something that will shape your life for the rest of your life. For example, now, since I met you, I won't lie to you, same way, I've understood. I mean, I still say I'm going to have a private, financial lesson with you. But again, it's because I saw value. This woman, she knows, she understands, she can cut my journey in half. So let's not be too shy, even as parents, especially as parents, because, when we are set in our ways, it's a funny thing. Pride setting, ego setting, especially for men. Man, I'd rather just drink my guy. I know if they ask, no.
So we should be open to learning. Yes. And I hear you very much, Doctor. Thank you so much. You just said something now that I'm not so sure I've even thought of it in that way before. We must introduce deliberate financial literacy through even devices to our children, because you talked about there's Blinkist, the books. So while we're in transit or something, just make sure that they're not playing games, or maybe like you and Madam Farms said earlier on, the time that you can still exercise this little bit of control, make sure that they are reading or listening to financial education material on their devices. I want to thank you so very much, because I want to disappoint my mentor who is around the call. I want to disappoint him to say, I'm not going to go beyond 2 hours. Imagine 1 hour conversation coming to 2 hours. I want to thank everybody. Kunle, it's so good to see your face. When did I see you last? December 2022. It's so good to see you, and thank you for sharing your insights about, getting the question on, racism, because Dr. dealt with it so well. We have to be prepared, we have to be real, we have to accept that it does exist, and then as parents, we have to get our children ready. I can't thank you both enough. I thank you so very much. I was hoping to keep it to the end before letting my friends around the call understand that my guest, Mrs. Farms, is someone that I know. I'm going to read a comment quickly before I come back to the rounding up. Thank you, Bosse Ogunleye. She's a young mother, so I'm interested in seeing what she wrote here. So she says, thanks so much for this session, Ma. I've really learned a lot from the speakers. communicate with the children often to avoid misconceptions, scheduling TV watching and gadget use. There should be no favoritism to avoid sibling rivalry. I'm so glad that you joined, Bose. I'm so very glad. Thank you so much. Yeah, the best time to burn the fish is when it is still fresh. Thank you very much. Dr. Ede, we're going to have to do this again. And I have to start working on myself because I've been too ambitious. I just like to, get a conversation from, like you said, a diverse perspective. But I think it was also a repeat of what happened in January when I had two strong personalities coming to speak to my friends for just 1 hour. I want to thank you so much, Dr. Ede. I love watching you and your wife. I love the relationship you have with your children. I'm so grateful to God, and I'm happy that people like you are parenting, the future generation. Thank you so much for doing this with me. Mrs. Farms, Your Honor, if we were not on this program, I would be calling her Your Honor. So she's a government worker and she didn't want that out here, but she is Your Honor. Those that know, they know. Thank you very much for spending your afternoon with us. Kule, I'm grateful. I'm happy to see your face. I know you've been joining the Finance Coach programs, and I will take a conversation offline with you. Thank you so much. Mr. Nii Matheson, thank you for joining us. Dr. T from Manchester, thank you so much. Yes, I'm happy. It's not all my sessions that Dr. T enjoys, but she enjoyed this session today. Your Honor, Chief Magistrate Lighton Ajayi, thank you so much for joining. Did I say it right? I want to thank everybody. I know if I'd asked Mrs. Oshikoya to say something, she would have spoken. I don't know why I couldn't get Admiral Ore to say something, but thank you so much, sir, for joining. I'm always so grateful when I enjoy my sessions. Thank you so much, sir, and thank you for the question that you asked. Bose, I thank you for joining. This must be Mrs. Aoyemi's husband. Mr. Adedayo Aoyemi, thank you so much for joining us. Bumi Awe, wow. Okay, is that from you? Thank you so much, Mrs. Awe.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Of course, Mrs. Aoyemi, thank you so much. Celestina, good to see you. They are the ones parenting Generation Alpha. Abi, Dr. Ede, this session has taught me Generation Alpha and Gen Z and all of that. Dami, I'm happy to see you here. I know you have young children. Gabriel, don't do me forward now. You just joined, but I'm happy to see you. And Joshua, who was laughing at me, I think this Lola is Pastor Lola from church, must be Dr. Lola from church. And NG, my darling sister, thank you for always joining, NG. Thank you so much. Tosin, thank you so much. I don't know if this is Tosin Komalafe or which Tosin this is. And Pastor Nee, if you like, join with any name. You are the one that joined with Wanadio, and I'm very happy that this meeting stops at 4 p.m. Thank you so much, sir. And Zoom user, I don't know who that is. I don't know if it's Admiral Komalafe, but thank you so much for joining us. I'm grateful, Dr. Ede. Thank you. Mrs. Farms, thank you so much. Have a good evening, everybody. The recording will be sent to those that are...
Alexa, hold on.